In a land far, far away, for the 6th time, I embarked on a journey of a lifetime. So I dressed myself in a silk tatar gown, a tubite and shawl, an izu, and prepared to take the grueling journey through the time-space continuum. It always really messes up my stomach. But first, I needed to set up the table so that it could be ready for a week of feasting upon arrival. I laid out a wooden placemat, multiple bowls, a small plate, chopsticks, and lit some candles, and set off to hop over to a multiverse where everything is exactly as it is in this one, except it is not at all out of the ordinary to wear historical clothing and eat historical food. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Food Week. This time, I'm adventuring into Edo-period Japan. Why hello there, dear viewer, this is the adventurer from the future. I keep saying Edo-period here, but it's actually pronounced Edo-period. It takes me half the video to realize I'm pronouncing it wrong, and when I finally do, it's actually sort of funny. I have to research and memorize so much information for these multi-dimensional historical food adventures that sometimes I make mistakes. I am a human after all. Okay, now back to your regularly scheduled programming. And I'm going to be eating the diet of commoners. I am wearing the clothing of my own indigenous ancestors, which are the Tatars, and this is an outfit that I made, and I'm very proud to wear it. It is one that we wore throughout the 1800s, and it's actually not the outfit of commoners. It's for more wealthy townspeople, but I figured it would work for the same period. The Edo period in Japan was from approximately 1600 until 1868. So it's a pretty large chunk of time. That's why for this food week, I decided to create a sort of profile of an individual. That way it would be more straightforward as to what foods would actually have been available to me. I wanted it to feel like I was being welcomed into a Japanese Edo period home as a Tatar, and actually there's quite a bit of Japanese influence in Tatar fashion. For instance, it is a common practice that we use to blacken our teeth, which is something that Japanese people also did and also sometimes still do today. There's other things like we used to put white face paint on our faces and have bright red cheeks. I'll be visiting a coastal place in the late Edo period, and I'll be staying with a commoner family. This commoner family isn't the poorest of the poor, but they are still not well off. So they can't often eat delicacies, but they can occasionally afford things like inexpensive fish and seafood. And also due to having proximity to the shoreline, that becomes a little bit more accessible to them. They're also able to afford nicer food for holidays and celebrations, but this is still considered a rare treat. Food and recipes in Edo period Japan is fairly well documented actually. Most of the documentation that is available is for the samurai class or for upper class individuals. And the way that we learn a lot of information about what everyday people ate is actually through stories and books that are typically set in the period. And then they tend to describe little tidbits about what someone was eating or certain things that related to food practices. There's also this style of comical stories called Rakugo, which is often why we know about what some common people ate. But the diets of everyday individuals would have varied greatly depending on where you were located in Japan, as well as your proximity to the shoreline. But it seems to be that the majority of the everyday Japanese Edo period diet was rice, tofu, and various pickled and fresh vegetables, in addition to the consumption of inexpensive seafood. It seems to be that possibly the very first meal was consumed around sunrise or an hour before sunrise or following sunrise, and this typically was when the rice was cooked as well, because rice was cooked once a day in order to conserve firewood. The preparation of this rice was also important because it was generally the only meal that would have been consumed hot and fresh. You would think that white rice would be the go-to for everyday people, but it actually was not, and that's because milling white rice would have been incredibly time-consuming and expensive. So white rice was seen as a luxury item. Instead, everyday people generally ate brown rice, or they ate a mix of different grains, so potentially millet and barley and brown rice. Millet and barley are some of the cheapest grains during the period, so it makes sense why this would kind of get mixed in. Aside from the breakfast timing, it's not really clear when lunch or dinner was eaten, nor whether people ate 2 or 3 meals. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be eating 3 meals a day, a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. The goal of this video is not to perfectly represent the life and the culture and the food of Edo period people. It's more so done as an experiment for what it maybe would have been like to eat some of these recipes or meals. Now that you have an idea of what the plan is for this food week, let's power up the time machine and travel to a world where everything is exactly as it is in this one, except it's not out of the ordinary to eat historical food and wear historical clothing. All right, let's go! After some disorientation from the whirling and twirling and breaking of the time-space continuum, I made it to my destination mostly unscathed, ready to get started with the week. So I began with one of the biggest staples of the commoner Edo-period Japanese cuisine, 1 part brown rice, 1 part barley, and 1 part millet. I rinsed everything 3 times, added some fresh water, and set it aside to boil. Once that was done, I started to prepare a soup. I added some kombu, chopped daikon radish, and shiitake mushrooms into a pot, followed by the chopped greens of the garlic plant. Once the soup was done boiling and I took it off the heat, I added some miso paste. You don't want to boil miso. I chopped some lotus root and was amazed by its incredible shape and got ready to fry the pieces in some sesame oil. During the late Edo period, you start to see more and more cookbooks crop up designed for the everyday person, but just because these books existed did not mean that commoners could actually regularly afford to prepare those meals. That's why stories and narrative fiction still seem to be one of the major ways that we can tell what commoners consumed. One of the ways I discerned what ingredients might be feasible is because of a gem of a book called Ryore Monogatari. Published in 1643 at the start of the Edo period, making it one of the oldest extant collection of recipes from Japan, this has been described as a book for everyday people, as it is written in simple and straightforward Japanese for the period. In reality, many of the recipes are anything but accessible to the commoner without much money. Swan meat? Pufferfish? Ingredients like these were definitely not for the everyday person. Instead, I referenced a brilliant list of vegetables within the book that were available during the Edo period, along with their preparation methods. And then I cross-referenced with internet searches and other sources to see if commoners may have had the ingredients that I discovered. Ingredients like lotus root and daikon radish made the cut, so they went on my list. Made the cut, that's funny. Once the lotus root was fried up, I set it aside and started to prepare a salad of sliced cucumber topped with some dulse seaweed. And finally, I thinly sliced some tofu and fried it on a hot pan with sesame oil. Our very first meal is here, and it's so exciting. Japanese food is one of my all-time favorite cuisines, so I have some experience making it because I tend to make it a lot for myself, even if it's just incorporating small elements. So I had to use a lot of my prior knowledge to take some creative liberty in forming these recipes. So today on the menu we have some brown rice mixed with millet and barley. And then for side dishes, we have fried tofu and fried lotus root. And then I made a miso soup with a kombu base and some shiitake mushroom and daikon radish, as well as the green sprouts of garlic. And then for the salad, there's wakame seaweed with cucumber and some pickled carrot. For the rice and the salad and the lotus root and tofu, I put the seasonings of soy sauce and umesu and a little bit of sushi vinegar. Whew, that's a lot. Okay, here we go. Let's dig in because I am starving and it looks absolutely delicious. Okay, let's try the rice first, the rice mix. It's really nice actually. Get some fried lotus root. It tastes like a mix of sweet potato and potato chips. If the two of them had a baby, that's what this would be like. And then the fried tofu. Now I'm going to try the miso soup. I often eat daikon radish just raw or with a little bit of sauce on top, like soy sauce and mirin and umesu. But it's so nice boiled. It has a much softer texture to it, and it isn't as pungent of a flavor because daikon radish has quite a zing to it when it's raw. And last but not least, let's try the salads. We got some pickled carrot. I love pickled carrot. This is such a good dish. Wow, everything pairs so well together. This is a dish that I just made up with ingredients that I know were available during the period and were commonly eaten by everyday people. This food is just so good that I have to give it a 5 out of 5 kimonos because it's just absolutely delicious. It's so nourishing and all the flavors complement each other really well. And I also love the aspect of having a bunch of little separate meals. I just think that's such a beautiful way to consume food, which is something you see a lot more in Japanese culture. I think bento boxes is probably a very good example of this, how all the little ingredients are sort of having their own compartments. It's very cute and also a very fun way to eat your food. This is exactly what I'm going to be eating for lunch later as well, leftovers of these meals. And then for dinner, I'm going to be making something a little bit different, so I'll see you all then. Tonight on the dinner menu, I have something kind of interesting in store. I read that one of the dinners that may have potentially been consumed is leftover rice with hot green tea poured over it. So that's what I've done. I have some of the leftover rice from earlier and I've poured some hot green tea over it, and then with a side of vegetables and some pickled vegetables as well. So I'm gonna try this. I've never put green tea on rice before, so I'm very curious. I may have poured too much green tea because it's like a soup now, but let's try it. I cannot even pick it up with my chopsticks because it's so soupy. It's really interesting with the green tea, wow. I have to drink some of the tea. It's so weird drinking this tea like a soup, and there's a little bit of soy sauce in here too, so it's like soy sauce and green tea, which tastes so good for some reason. Salty, umami green tea. The pickles now, vegetables. I think I would give it a 3 out of 5 kimonos because the green tea and soy sauce and rice is a really interesting combination of flavors. But it also definitely wasn't as good as the meal for breakfast. We're doing something a little bit different tomorrow, and it's probably gonna push me to the limits a little bit. On this day, I was actually able to get up before the sunrise, so I lit a candle to begin preparing some morning brown rice. By the time it was done, the sun had already begun to rise and the sky lit up with such beautiful colors. I took a moment to appreciate its beauty. Truly the Japanese philosophy of mono no aware. As I was researching for this video, I came across a moving poem called Ame ni mo makezu, or Be Not Defeated by the Rain, by Kenji Miyazawa. I do not speak Japanese, so hopefully that pronunciation was somewhat decent. Although written in 1931, a few of the lines offer us direct insight into the diet of a common Japanese man. The lines are, always smiling quietly, dining daily on 4 cups of brown rice, some miso, and a few vegetables. I also threw in some diced tofu because I already know myself and knew that I would completely crash if I didn't get at least a little bit of protein. So I put together a miso soup with tofu and let it cook for a while, and I dressed my fresh hot rice with umesu and soy sauce. Today I have, just like the poem says, brown rice, some miso. I did add some tofu in. And for the vegetables, I have some cucumber and a little bit of pickled carrot, which I've drizzled some umesu on top of. Let's dig in. I cooked this so nicely. So much rice. It's gonna be a long week. As you can see, I was not quite able to finish my rice. I got very, very close. The way I prepared everything, I'll give it a 3 out of 5 kimonos. And obviously I chose kimono because it's such a beautiful Japanese garment. Oh my god. I'm actually craving some mugwort tea a lot today. It's one of my all-time favorite plants. So I'm gonna go out into the woods and forage some, and I'll be back a little bit later. You guys, I'm not even kidding you. I think I am the only one around. I was the only person the entire journey here, and I just have absolutely no idea what's happening right now. Hi Vasi, I've sent this little gift for you. I think it might be useful. Okay. This is the last book, The Diary of the Last Earthling from Hungry Minds, who are the sponsor of this video. It is a hybrid of a personal diary and encyclopedia written by the same person who sent me this note, Noah Kaplan, who is the last surviving Earthling. He escaped the planet's destruction on an alien ship, but of course, being the last human, he's super lonely, so he decides to write down everything remarkable about humanity to serve as a tribute and a message to our species. This book feels fresh and cutting edge because it uniquely fuses narrative fiction with factual content. And the illustrations inside are absolutely stunning, and there is no AI used whatsoever, as they're all drawn by a talented team of illustrators over at Hungry Minds. Each page is absolutely packed with the deep inner thoughts of Noah, as well as endless Easter eggs and intriguing details to look through, And I also really appreciate that Noah's writings give a well-rounded perspective of humanity and talk about some of the darker aspects as well. One of my favorite parts of the book, which honestly made my jaw drop when I first saw it, is this one where you can see layers of pages that Noah tore out of the book. It looks so incredibly realistic, and I also love how recipes are interspersed throughout the diary entries as they relate to some of the historical facts being presented. I also love the section called Why Things Changed and Where We Thought Those Things Were Going, where Noah writes about humans' beliefs around evolution, including details such as how throughout evolution, many types of trees learned how to communicate to each other through underground networks. I feel very connected to trees and regularly like to mention the Wood Wide Web in conversations, so this part really stood out to me. As someone who absolutely loves history, but more than anything, the way history relates to everyday people, the last book is a treasure trove of fascinating knowledge, and I feel it would make an inspiring and meaningful gift for other curious minds. I also just can't get over how high quality it is. The cover is so heavy-duty and pleasant to touch, and the pages, they have this aged feel to it, so it really immerses you in the experience. If you'd like to get your very own copy of the last book, follow the link in my description. Thank you so much again to Hungry Minds for sponsoring this video, and now I need to go and find that mugwort that I was craving, and then see if I truly am the only human left on this planet, because I'm starting to get a little bit worried. I just returned home, and I am absolutely starving. Thankfully, I already know what's on the lunch menu. Rice, miso, tofu, and vegetables. It is dinner time. I am so hungry. I cannot even describe to you this level of hunger that I've been feeling today. Even I've been eating, I would say, rather large portions for probably what was consumed in this specific poem and in this specific scenario. And I even added in the tofu, and I'm eating a lot more than just a few vegetables. And I am still so hungry. I think my body is not used to eating this much rice. Apparently in the Edo period, commoners most likely ate about 70 to 80% of their diet as rice and other mixed grains like millet and barley, far more than is consumed by the average Japanese person today. Luckily, things like pickled vegetables and vegetables in general were fairly affordable, so most households ate pickled vegetables daily, and if they weren't buying it from vendors, they were pickling it themselves. Because I am going to go mad otherwise, I decided to mix up the vegetables a little bit tonight, and I included daikon radish. Daikon radish becomes popularized in the Edo period, so this is very common and very prevalent. And in the sources I was reading, I kept seeing references specifically to pickled daikon radish. I topped it off with a little bit of rice vinegar and umesu again, because then I can get a little bit of sweet and salty sour flavor going on. And underneath this is the rest of the miso and tofu and kombu soup, and then underneath that is the brown rice that I had left over. It is so much rice. Okay, I'm just gonna have a bite because I need to eat. It's really nice all mixed together, actually. Tomorrow, I absolutely need to find some fish. Since in this scenario, I am a coastal person, I would have access to more fish than someone living inland. But although I'm coastal, from what I was reading, it's actually not that prevalent for commoners, even on the coast, to be eating fish daily. That is not something that you see because fish was quite expensive even when it was very prevalent. There were some types of seafood though that were relatively affordable, and that includes things like sardines and mackerel and anchovies and some types of clams. So tomorrow I'm gonna go and buy some mackerel and sardines and anchovies and maybe clams if I can find them. I'm gonna finish up my dinner and I will see you all in the morning. It is day 3, and yesterday when I was going to bed, I started to break out in these weird rash welts. I think I counted about 30 of them on my body. They were everywhere, and in such weird places too. I'm not looking for medical advice or anything like that, but that means that something I ate probably set it off. I tend to have quite a sensitive system, so I'm thinking maybe all the rice that I've been eating, because I normally don't eat that much rice in my life. So I'm going to try and scale it back today and eat a lot less rice than I did yesterday, because yeah, that was just way too much. I think I pushed my body over the limit on that. I actually have a little recipe in store today that is described in a book from the late Edo period, which I'll explain a little bit more about once I'm actually eating the food and making the food. But I'm very excited to put that together today because I'm just curious to try it. It looks really good on the recipe. Well, it's not even really a recipe, it's a description, let's put it that way. There's no actual portions, it just describes to you what someone's dish is made of. Alright, well, let's get to cooking. I began the meal preparations by blanching a big block of tofu just for a few minutes to help remove the moisture, and I set it aside. Then I chopped some potatoes, daikon radish, and carrots, and set them all into a soup pot. I also added in some anchovies for flavor. I took the blanched tofu from earlier and started to mash it with a pestle and mortar, adding in some soy sauce, sesame oil, umetsu, and sushi vinegar. Once the soup was boiled and off the flame, I added in some miso to the broth and gave everything a big stir. I took some hijiki seaweed and drained it, then set it into a bowl, topping it off with the mashed tofu mixture that I prepared, and my meal was ready. I managed to spill soup pretty much all over the front of my dress today whilst cooking, but that's okay. Today on the menu we have some dishes that were mentioned in a book called Okiyoboro, and I'm very excited to try them. I didn't have burdock root. It's on its way actually. The shipment has been delayed because it's kind of hard to find burdock root. I could go and forage some, but I'm not that familiar with burdocks, so there are bold foragers and there are old foragers, but there are not bold and old foragers. Be very careful out there. So on the menu we have hijiki seaweed. I think it's either hijiki or hijiki, I don't really know. Topped off with a mashed tofu, which I mashed with a mortar and pestle. For the soup we have a miso broth with carrots, daikon radish, anchovies, and potatoes, which I don't know why it surprised me that there were already potatoes in the Edo period. Sweet potatoes made perfect sense to me for some reason because I've definitely seen them referenced a lot in Japanese culture. It surprised me somehow, but yes, they were indeed in Edo period Japan. I believe they came to Japan in the 1600s, maybe 1601 if I'm not mistaken. I can't quite remember the date. They came with Dutch ships. Anyways. It's a very interesting seaweed. It has sort of a noodly texture. It's also a bit cylindrical rather than being flat, so it's really interesting. I really like this. It's like noodles and egg, but it's seaweed and mashed tofu. Alright, now let's try the soup. Ooh, this is lovely. The anchovies actually add so much to the complexity of the flavors. I would rate the soup a 5 out of 5 kimonos, really tasty. And I would rate the hijiki with mashed tofu a 5 out of 5 kimonos as well. Maybe even a 6 out of 5 kimonos. It's just such a tasty dish. It really does taste like noodles with egg on top. For lunch, I think I'm going to do some leftovers. So I think I might do some leftover rice. And then from the first day, I still have some leftover miso. So I'm going to finish that. And maybe a little bit more of this mashed tofu as well. And after this absolutely delicious meal, I will see you all for dinner time. Dinner preparations commenced, and since I still had a lot left over from the day, I focused on just preparing one additional meal. I peeled some Japanese sweet potatoes and cut them up, setting them into a pot to boil. Then I strained the liquid away and mashed them with a pestle. Finally, I mixed in some soy sauce, sesame oil, umetsu, and mirin. Tonight on the dinner menu is an assortment of little dishes that I prepared. The new one is a yaki imo, which is a Japanese sweet potato. And in the book Okiyoboro, there's mentions of Japanese sweet potato being eaten roasted. And it's being eaten by commoners, which shows you that people were also interested in desserts and trying to find sweet treats wherever they could during the late Edo period. I decided to go with a mashed version, and I added in a couple of other flavors to give it a more complex flavor profile. So I added in some sesame oil, some soy sauce, and a little dash of umetsu. And then I have some of the leftover mashed tofu and hijiki, and I also added in a little bit of mackerel fillet. And then finally, I have some of the leftover miso, anchovy, potato, and carrot soup from earlier. I'll start with the yaki imo. Such a good flavor. It's not like a lot of the sweet potatoes that you get that have quite an overwhelming flavor. It's very light and delicate. Let's try some of the mashed tofu again with the hijiki. Yummy. A little bit of mackerel. And then I'm gonna try the soup cold. Ooh, I really like it cold. I think maybe even more than hot. Interesting. Some soups really are better cold versus hot. I don't know why that is, but I'm gonna give the yaki imo a 6 out of 5 kimonos. So incredibly good. I will give the mashed tofu and hijiki and mackerel a 6 out of 5 kimonos as well. Also extremely good. And the cold soup, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5 kimonos. I don't know whether I gave it a 6 out of 5 when it was hot or not, but it's very high up there basically. I really want to try these potatoes as well, roasted, because I feel like they'd end up with an even more nutty, caramelized kind of flavor. Well, that was amazing. I'm going to finish up all this food and head to bed, and I will see you all tomorrow for day 4. I think it's day 4. Alright, by this point, dear viewer, you know the drill. I started the day off with boiling some fresh brown rice. I chopped some daikon radish, cucumber, nashi pear, and a little bit of shiso, which is a lovely tasting Japanese basil plant, and I set these ingredients aside. In a hot pan with sesame oil, I added in enoki mushrooms. I'm not certain whether or not these were cultivated already in the Edo period, but they do grow wild in Japan and are a native species there, so it would have still been possible to forage them. I dressed the ingredients I chopped earlier with some umesu. On the menu this morning is a nice little assortment of dishes. I've prepared a cucumber, daikon radish, and nashi pear salad. I love all of these ingredients so much. Nashi pears have to be one of my all-time favorite things. Additionally, I have some of the mackerel and the mashed tofu and hijiki from yesterday. And I've prepared some hot rice this morning with a little bit of soy sauce on top. I've also taken the rest of the sweet potato dish from last night, a little bit of pickled carrots, and I prepared some enoki mushrooms, which I fried with some umesu, sesame oil, soy sauce, and a little bit of vinegar. I am loving the cooking process of this food week because I much prefer to cook just based off of a list of ingredients, and just the fact that I can take a list of ingredients which I knew were available during that period and then come up with my own creative ways to mix them together and top them off. I think that that's just such a nice feeling, and that's really how I enjoy cooking. Let's dig in. I'm going to start with the salad, I think. Wow, that is so good. It's such an interesting combination of flavors. You have the freshness of the cucumber, the slight sweetness of the nashi pear, but all of it's very crispy. And then you get the slight heat and bitterness of the daikon radish. Now I'll try some enoki mushroom. It looks like noodles, which I really enjoy. So good. So amazing. A little pickled carrot. Wow, this is heavenly food. Enoki mushrooms are so good. How do they taste like this? Everything about this dish is absolutely exquisite. It's so good. Oh my god. I wish I could give all of this to you and have you taste it through the screen, because yes, it's just that much of an amazing experience. This has to be one of my favorite sets of meals that I've had in any of the food weeks. That's how good it is. I give all of these dishes together a 7 out of 5 kimonos. I know I just keep on raising the number more and more. I will see you all later for even more incredible dishes in store, and I have a feeling they're probably going to be amazing because everything so far except one of the days, which was a little bit hard, has been incredible. I was really looking forward to preparing this ingredient for dinner. This is mountain yam, a type of yam native to Japan, and it has this unique hairy appearance to its skin. It's known for being very sticky, which I found out firsthand. So many puns intended. Oh my god, it's so sticky. Ugh. I chopped some garlic greens to go along with the mountain yam, and I heated up some sesame oil. I started to saute the garlic greens and mountain yam, but the consistency of the latter definitely took some getting used to. Tonight on the menu is some leftover rice with some of the leftover miso, potato, carrot, and daikon radish stew poured over it. And then I prepared a new dish tonight, and that is mountain yam nagaimo. And I'm really curious to try this. It was so incredibly sticky when I was cutting it. I was told it was going to be sticky, but I didn't even realize how sticky it actually was until I was there. Also, I realized I've been pronouncing the Edo period wrong this entire video. I kept saying Edo period. It's Edo period. And if you're Japanese and you speak Japanese, you can probably even correct that pronunciation a little bit more. Let's try the mountain yam first, nagaimo. Wow, that's such a strange texture. You think it's gonna be a potato because it tastes a bit like a potato, but then it's very fresh and crunchy, almost like jicama if you've ever had jicama, but then it's slightly sticky as well when you're eating it. So it's such a weird combination. Let's try the rice and soup. Super, super delicious. I'm allowing myself one really lame pun per video. I can have cool ones, but it's one lame one per video. So I give this meal a 4 out of 5 kimonos because I really like the mountain yam, but it's also just a bit strange and I'm having to get used to it. I think after I take a few more bites, it might increase the rating. I really like the flavor a lot. It's delicious. It's just the texture I'm getting accustomed to. Alright, well it's time for me to go to bed and my battery's almost dead. Wow, that was a rhyme. And I haven't got the time. Alright, I'm done. See you all tomorrow for day 5. I started the day off with my usual rice cooking routine and threw together a super simple breakfast. This morning I decided to keep my food a little bit more simple, and so I went with some brown rice, which I cooked fresh, some sardines, and some pickled carrots. But one thing I really wanted to do was to test something. When I was doing research for this video, I came across this little section that's really interesting and I wanted to read it to you all because it's just really making me think. Kofi is the Rakugo story of a young man who lost all his money to a pickpocket, was rescued by the owner of a tofu shop, and subsequently helped to make the shop more prosperous. Wow, this sounds like a riveting storyline. Dialogue from the story tells us that 3.575 kilograms of rice was prepared every morning for this household of 5 or 6, including employees. That means that each person ate 575 to 715 grams of rice per day. So I wanted to test eating that amount of rice today to see how I feel, as well as if it feels like a reasonable amount to be eating. So in this bowl currently is approximately 350 grams of cooked rice. So this is about half of my portion of rice for the day. And why this is interesting to me is because we don't often think about portion sizes for people, especially not commoners. So having a primary source piece of information like this can be really educational in us understanding a little bit more about people during that time. I'm going to dig into my 350 grams of rice, and I'm very glad to have some more seafood as well. I love sardines. I'm going to give this meal a 3.5 out of 5 kimonos because it's not quite as good as some of the 4 out of 5 meals or 5 out of 5 meals, but it is still a very good meal. It's just quite simple and straightforward, and simple isn't always bad, of course. In this case, it's definitely not. It's just not anything that interesting. For lunch, I'll be eating the rest of the rice, as well as the final remains of this miso soup from 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I don't know how many days ago now. And then a little bit more mashed tofu on top because it just sounds really delicious, and I want a little bit more protein. I'll see you all tonight for dinner time, where I'll definitely pronounce it as Edo and not Edo. I can't believe I did that for like the whole video. Okay, half of the video. At least I didn't do it for the whole video. I realized at some point that it wasn't correct. I added some water and rice vinegar into a heated pot, as well as a pinch of sugar, and I let the mixture come to a boil. I poured it into a separate bowl and set it aside to cool. This beautiful vegetable is a winter melon. It's a type of gourd common in Asian cuisine, and because of how large it is, usually it's sold in slices like these. I peeled the skin and chopped the flesh into small pieces. Then I took a little soaked and cooked kombu and sliced that as well, adding it to the winter melon. Finally, I poured the vinegar mixture over the ingredients and set it in the fridge to marinate for a couple of hours. In a pot with some soaked kombu, I added in some water and started preparing the ingredients for a stew. I chopped open a Japanese pumpkin called kabocha, and suddenly the air was filled with a delicately sweet aroma. Wow, it smells amazing. Kabocha is said to have been brought to Japan in 1541 from Cambodia by Portuguese sailors. I added the pieces to the pot of water and then chopped up some taro root, along with some shiitake mushrooms and green garlic. Tonight for dinner, I did lots of cooking, which ideally, I think as a commoner in the Edo period, I would probably have done this meal in the morning and then eaten it cold later is what I'm guessing. You know, to conserve firewood and everything. I just think that would make more logical sense. But that didn't happen, so perhaps it's a special occasion or there's guests coming over and we just had to cook some hot food for them. On the menu tonight is a stew cooked in the style of nimono, which is basically where you have a little bit of broth and then you cook some vegetables or various things inside of it. You can also cook some meats and stuff depending on how you're consuming it and also what you can afford. I made it with Japanese pumpkin, taro root, some of the green garlic stems, shiitake mushroom, and I cooked it in a dashi that I made with some kombu and a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of mirin, and a little bit of umesu just for a vinegar kick. I don't think I've ever... Ooh, the candle went out. Okay. Ugh, smoking a lot. Okay, there's a smoking thing going on here. Oof. Back to business. I don't think I've ever eaten taro root before, nor Japanese pumpkin, so I'm really excited to try these. I just know of taro root mainly from Stardew Valley, which leads me to my next dish, and that is a winter melon pickled dish. And this one is prepared in the style of namasu, which basically is a pickled vegetable dish that then gets served cold. I ended up going down so many different rabbit holes trying to learn a lot of these different preparation methods and terminologies, and I'm sure I'm still not getting them perfect, which is totally okay because I'm not Japanese. I just admire the food so incredibly much, and the culture as well. I think there are so many beautiful things about Japanese culture. Alright, enough with chatting. I'm going to dig in. First things first, gonna try this little pickled winter melon. Wow. That's very strange. I don't know why I was expecting it to be slightly sweet, but I was. So when it wasn't, it was kind of shocking to me. It tastes a lot like a cucumber actually, like a more dry, airy cucumber. So maybe like a raw courgette. I almost wish I'd put some nashi pear in here because I feel like combined with the crispness of the winter melon and the sweetness of the crispy nashi, together they would make such an interesting pairing. Okay, let's try the stewed vegetables. Wow, that's really good. Taro root has a very interesting flavor. And then the pumpkin together with it is so nice, and I love this type of Japanese pumpkin. It's very subtle. I wonder how it tastes with the pickles. The flavors combined together are amazing. I give both of these dishes a 5 out of 5 kimonos, and combined they make an even more amazing dish. I'm going to finish my food, but for now, I'll see you all tomorrow for day 6. Good night. The next morning, I felt inspired to cook a more elaborate meal than the morning prior. I started out with some nasubi, or Japanese aubergine, and sliced it into discs, and then I chopped some green garlic for flavor along with leek. Then I moved on to finely slicing tofu to get it ready for frying. I added in all the alliums to a pan with sesame oil, and once done, I set this aside. Then, once the pan was clean, I added in some of the aubergine and let it fry. I ran out of sesame oil at this point, so I had to cook it in olive oil. Gasp, I know, this is definitely not Japanese, but I had no other option. Maybe there was a visitor from Italy staying with us during the Edo period, who knows. Within the next hour, I was able to get some more sesame oil, thankfully, so I didn't have to cook with olive oil for long. I fried the tofu in some sesame oil, making sure it would crisp up just a little bit on both sides, and then I started assembling the ingredients in a serving bowl. In a bowl, I added in some genmai miso, some mirin, and some sesame oil, and gave everything a mix until it formed a sauce. First, I poured the miso sauce over some brown rice and aubergine, and created a dish called nasu no shigiyaki. And then, in a separate bowl, I mixed together another sauce of a sweeter shiro miso and some umisu, along with a side of dulse seaweed. This recipe comes from a book first published in 1782 called Tofu Hyakuchin, and it describes 100 delightful ways to prepare tofu, as the title suggests. This dish is called subute dengaku. I topped off the tofu with some mustard and poppy seeds, as the recipe said to do. Today I put together quite the little combination of dishes. I'm very excited. I was feeling pretty sad this morning for no real reason, and so I barely had the energy to be able to cook, but I pushed through it, and that's why I have no makeup on, because I just did not have the energy. Thankfully, I feel very beautiful without makeup on, so I like being this way too. Today's dishes include a grilled tofu with a vinegar miso dressing, and I topped it off with some mustard seeds and poppy seeds, and some dulse seaweed, as well as some pickled ginger. Then I have some freshly cooked brown rice, as well as some pan-grilled Japanese aubergine, which I topped with a genmai miso dressing, which I made with mirin, a little bit of sesame oil, some miso, and then I topped that off with some roasted leeks and the green parts of garlic, as well as some of the pickled winter melon from the other day, and some rehydrated dried daikon radish. Wow, okay, that was a lot. Well, let's try it. Let's dig in. This looks really good, so I'm very excited to eat it. Wow. The aubergine is amazing. Wow, I'm honestly having a silencing moment right now because of how good everything is. My mood already just feels 10 times better after eating this. Alright, now let's try the grilled tofu. It's also absolutely delicious. The ginger and dulse are both really nicely combined with it as well because they really help to neutralize the zinginess of the vinegar. So the grilled aubergine dish gets a 7 out of 5 kimonos. So good. And then the grilled tofu dish, I give it a 5 out of 5 kimonos. I think I could have gone a little bit lighter on the umesu, so it's a little bit on the vinegary side, but still very, very good. And the poppy seeds and mustard seeds actually do a lot for the flavor too. I was actually quite surprised by that. Well, there's my slightly complex breakfast for the day. I will see you all for dinner time. For dinner, I worked with another ingredient that I hadn't really tried before called kudzu or kuzu, otherwise known as Japanese arrowroot. This is another tofu recipe that comes from tofu hyakuchin called agenagashi, in which the instructions state, after frying tofu with sesame oil, blanch it to remove the oil, and then boil in kuzu-yu, otherwise known as arrowroot gruel. I decided to also add in some taro root, as I didn't have very much of the kudzu, and I let that boil for a while. Then I chopped up some remaining winter melon to prepare a little salad, along with daikon radish. I dressed them with umesu, soy sauce, and mirin, and I gave everything a mix. Once the taro and kuzu were boiled, I mashed them together and added in some fresh hot water to thin out the paste, turning it into more of a gruel, as described. Then I blanched some fried tofu from the morning in order to remove the excess oil, and I mixed that tofu in a pot with the kuzu gruel, or kuzu-yu. I let this boil for a while until there wasn't as much water in the mixture. It is night 6, and tonight, for dinner, I've prepared another tofu dish from the book Tofu Hyakuchin. This is another one of the recipes that the author rates as superb cuisine, and it is one made with arrowroot gruel. Actually, it's kuzu gruel, which is known as Japanese arrowroot. It turns out that arrowroot and Japanese arrowroot are actually different things, fun fact. I'm also serving it with some of the leftovers of the aubergine from earlier with the miso, as well as some more dulse. And then I prepared a little winter melon and daikon radish salad topped with a bit of shiso, as well as some pickled ginger. Well, I am very, very excited for this. I'm going to dig in. It's really nice. It might seem like this entire week is rigged. I promise you it's not. The food is all just so ridiculously good. This is also incredible. What is this? What is up with this food week? It's interesting because the addition of the winter melon really helps to neutralize the spiciness of the daikon radish. Now I have this big urge to invite a bunch of my friends over for an Edo-period Japanese food party. I'm also really amazed by how many of these dishes and ingredients you can find in modern day Japan. In fact, so much of the time when I was researching these, modern recipes would come up and they would be essentially the same as some of the ingredient suggestions in the historical ones. I will give both of these dishes a 6 out of 5 kimonos. And as you can tell, I'm in a much better mood now this evening. Thankfully, the sadness has passed from my body. I just sat with it, felt my feelings, and in the end, I was okay. See you all tomorrow for day 7. Before I knew it, it was the morning of day 7, so I got to making some soup. I added some kombu and wakame to a pot, along with some sliced tofu and some dehydrated daikon radish. I stirred everything together and let it boil for a while. Then I added in some of this natto and miso condiment, which has a sweet and umami flavor to it and adds a lot to any dish. It contains some seaweed as well as mirin. Hello everyone, welcome to the final breakfast. I'm in very good spirits today and I'm very grateful for that, especially after yesterday. I kept it a little bit simple today for breakfast, well, relatively speaking, and I made some rice, the rest of the pickled winter melon and daikon radish from yesterday, some pickled ginger, pickled carrots, and then this amazing condiment topping, which is basically natto, which is a fermented bean, mixed with some miso and some mirin and a little bit of seaweed. And then I made a miso soup with some dashi, which I created by boiling some kombu. And then I added in some wakame seaweed, some tofu, some daikon radish that was dehydrated, as well as finally finishing it off with some more of the natto miso topping to be able to create some saltiness and flavor. All right, well, I am very excited to try this. This is my first time eating natto. I maybe had it once or twice when I was younger because I ate a lot of different Asian foods when I was younger, so maybe I don't remember, but from my memory, I've never had it before, so I'm curious. I'm actually gonna try it on its own first. Ooh. Wow, I really like it. It's quite pungent flavor, but it's delicious. So yummy too with the ginger and everything. A little bit of the tofu. Good soup. Have you seen that meme? That's one of the few that I know. I think this is the best miso soup I've made all week. It's really, really tasty. I will give these both a 5 out of 5 kimonos super tasty. The miso soup alone maybe would get a higher rating, just basically whatever rating would be higher than the other miso soups throughout the week. I don't know, this rating system is hard because everything's just good. And I'll see you all for dinner time because lunch is just gonna be leftovers. At last, the preparations of the Last Supper commenced, and with that, a return to our old friend, the mountain yam, this time prepared in a different way. So slippery. Oh my god. I peeled it and got to grating, which was incredibly entertaining. Look at it. Look at it oozing. This is so cool. I could play with this for hours. Oh my gosh. Look at this. I mixed in some soy sauce and mirin and set it aside. Finally, the burdock root arrived. I peeled it and sliced it into discs. In a hot pan with sesame oil, I fried some green garlic and the burdock root together, letting it cook until soft. And then I started to have a little bit of a problem. Alright, so I just prepared the mountain yam, and my skin is so itchy on my hands. It's so weird for me because the first time I prepared it, I didn't have this issue. It's actually recommended to use gloves for a lot of people because the oxalates in the skin can cause itching, so I'm a little bit nervous to eat the paste tororo. I wanted to eat it raw, like you normally do with tororo, but now that my hands are itchy, I'm a little bit scared of my throat getting itchy. Doesn't sound very fun. So I think I'm gonna take the tororo paste and make it into pancakes, and I looked this up, and apparently this is done in Japan now, so I feel like it could have actually been done in the Edo period as well. It makes me nervous that my hands are so itchy. They're finally now calming down after like 40 minutes. So I poured the tororo into a hot pan with sesame oil, but this did not work out as planned. I decided to add an egg to see if this would help bind the yam together better. This helped a little, but still not enough to form a pancake. So I decided to try the same mixture with a smaller pan, which also didn't work. Thankfully, the fourth time was the charm. I mixed some glutinous rice flour, which is what is used to make mochi, into the remaining grated mountain yam, and this worked perfectly. Oh my god, it works, oh my god, it works, okay. Oh my god, it worked! My experimentation was finally a success. Alright, so here are my pancakes now, and here's what I started with. Wow, that made such a big difference. Look how good those actually look. No Last Supper would be complete without dessert. I took these pre-formed mochi cakes mixed with mugwort, and the instructions said that they would puff up when placed into a hot pan. Whoa, it really is bulging. What is going on? I wasn't quite sure of how this was going to work, but I was pleasantly impressed. It's the final dinner, the Last Supper. I love calling it that. Tonight on the menu is two slightly different things. I've got some fried burdock root, which I don't think ever eaten before, and I've cooked it with the greens of some garlic. And then I tried to make this Nagai dish called tororo, and I got a little scared, as you can see in the video, because of the itchiness on my hands, so I didn't want that in my throat. So I decided to make it into a little pancake. Now, the other dish sitting next to me is the dessert, which I'll talk about in a moment, but I'm going to be eating this first. So let's give the burdock root a taste. It tastes like bamboo shoots, actually. All right, let's try this Nagai pancake. Wow, that's really good. Wow, this is so good. I will definitely make this again. But I'm wearing gloves next time I work with Nagai because, wow, that was, I'm just going to put this near the camera really quick so you can see how fluffy this is. I don't normally do this in the middle of my meals, but I want you to see how fluffy and amazing this pancake is. Absolutely delicious. I'm holding this with a chopstick right now too, and it's not the easiest. Okay, back to your regular scheduled programming. And tonight for dessert we have mochi yomogi, which is mochi made with mugwort. I ended up buying these blocks which just contain 2 ingredients. It's brown rice flour and some mugwort extract. And I've drizzled a little bit of honey on top. Beekeeping and honey production starts to increase during the Edo period. Prior to that, it's not as common from what I was reading. I don't know how accessible honey would be for everyday consumption for commoners in the Edo period, but due to the fact that mochi often was consumed as a celebratory meal, especially for things like New Year's celebrations, I decided to go for it and drizzle a little honey on top. Now, mochi has to be one of my all-time favorite things, especially the sweet mochi with the desserts. I think that's probably one of my favorite sweet things, and I'm a little bit particular about what sweet things I enjoy. And as you might know, because I went foraging for mugwort is one of my all-time favorite plants. It's not suitable for everyone though, so please do be careful, especially if you are pregnant. Use your common sense whilst foraging and do your own research first. All right, let's give this a little bite as our little celebration. It's amazing. The mugwort has such a nice flavor in it as well. It's almost a bit sage-like because mugwort does have a bit of a sage-like scent and flavor to it, but at the same time it's really delicate. Ratings-wise, the pancake for me gets a 7 out of 5 kimonos. Really incredible. I'm going to make this all of the time now. The burdock root gets a 3 out of 5 kimonos because it just fell a little bit flat. It wasn't one of my favorite dishes. Still good, just a lot of things were better. And the mochi gets a 5 out of 5 kimonos. I have to say, this has been one of my absolute favorite food weeks out of all the ones that I've done so far. It just was such a fun thing to experience, especially because I think I got to use a bit more of my creativity with some of the dishes since there are so many gaps to fill in and things that we don't really know. And then of course my obsession with Japanese food and flavors definitely has helped me enjoy this week even more, I'm sure. I can feel the leaves of the time machine slightly vibrating, which tells me that I think it's nearly time to go back to my own dimension and leave this multiverse where everything is exactly like it is in the other one, except it's not unusual to eat Edo period food and wear historical clothing. I hope you've enjoyed watching this food week as much as I've enjoyed putting together all these dishes and trying them all, and I also hope you'll feel inspired to try some of these as well. I'm to go back to my own dimension. It's coming with me, and the rest of the pancake. I'm not leaving this behind in the other dimension, no way. Here we go. There's a lot of smoke in here. Alright, time machine, send me back.